All right. So I just mentioned that when you are growing bone, you can't put the cells down after the fact. So bone is kind of a unique tissue. Most of the tissues in your body, if they are a stem cell, they can, the I don't know, nucleus of the cell can say, okay, you're going to become cardiac muscle. Okay, and then we want you to grow into heart. Okay, I can do that. Bone doesn't do that. Bone always has to have a template to follow. So the first thing that gets put down in an embryo is actually cartilage, and then that cartilage gets replaced by bone. That's one of the reasons why babies are so flexible, because their bodies still kind of have a lot of cartilage going on. Either way, once you put the cells down, those cells actually grow the bone matrix around them. So you kind of have the setup of, I'm going to place the cells where I want them, and then they'll start growing. We talked about this in chapter 4 when we talked about osteoblasts and osteocytes and osteoclasts. Osteoblasts are the ones that build. So they build a matrix. So when you are making bone, you actually put the cells down, and then the cells will actually make connections to each other called cell processes. Okay, so if there's a blood vessel over here, it can actually share with this cell, and then that cell can share with this one, and then this cell can share with this one. And if there are waste products, it can go the opposite direction, where if I've got waste product, I can allow it to go to this cell, which will haul it to this cell, which will haul it to the blood vessel to get rid of it. But again, it's one of those things where the cells have to be interconnected. You have concrete around all of these cells. So it's really important that when you put your cells down, they are connected and everything else before you put the concrete in. Let me erase and I'll be right back. All right, so when you're looking at a bone model, when you're actually looking at a bone model, you're looking basically at a pie piece cut out of the whole circle of the bone. So you're looking at one little chunk here. So the medullary cavity is going to be one end, and then the compact bone is going to be the other end. All right, so basically what you're seeing here, if this were the bone cut like a lifesaver, you're looking at a piece of bone like this, okay? That's what this is. It's a pie piece cut out of the center. And you're looking at it from this angle. So this outside is going to be here, okay? So what you have here is actually the compact bone along the outer edge. You've got the perforating canals, you've got the central canals, and here, these things that look like little roaches are actually the osteocytes. They're the living cells within the bone itself. Out here are those circumferential lamella that I told you about that go all the way around the circumference of your bone. This blue, this light blue, is actually going to be the periosteum. And then here, you can see these white fibers embedded in the outside of the compact bone. These are going to be the Sharpie's fibers. Now, I know you can't see it real well in this picture, but those units, those bullseyes that I talked about before, the osteons, they're actually up here at the top. Now, if this were our piece of bone, and here's my pie piece, you're looking at it from this side, okay? So you're looking at it from the inside. As you can see, you've got the spongy bone in here. And that light blue is still the covering, except in this case, since it's along the inside, this would be the endosteum, okay? The bone is going to be that beigey color, and here's a central canal, here's a central canal, here's a central canal. Don't forget that with central canals, we're talking about up and down, not side to side. These are the perforating canals. Now, remember I said that you put your cells down first. If those cells happen to die, I had them in concrete. Do you see these little spaces here? These little spaces are called lacuna. What does lacuna mean in Spanish? Cradle. So we actually have those cells inside of a space in the bone that was basically created for them to sit in. As they were osteoblasts and putting down the matrix, they got stuck inside of that space. So since they're stuck inside of that space, when they die, that space is still there. So when you look here, you'll see those empty spaces because the way that they made the model, those spaces are still there. Now looking at it from the top, okay, here are my osteons. Again, you can see that bullseye with the concentric circles. Each one of these circles that you see is a concentric lamella, okay? In the center of these are the central canals. The units of these, the actual physical bullseye, is what we call an osteon. Here are the osteocytes. They're the cells that are filling those holes. Here are the lacuna. Notice that there are no cells sitting in them. And then if you look here, these are not circles. They're not perfect bullseyes. They're just kind of filling space. These are those interstitial lamella, filling the spaces between our osteons. Again, each one of these is going to be a concentric lamella. These spaces are going to be the lacuna because there is no cell in them. See these? These actually have cells in those spaces. They're not empty like these are. Do you see the little radiating lines coming out from there? These are called canaliculus. If you are saying it singular, it's canaliculus. If you're saying it plural, it's canaliculi. Remember those cell extensions that I showed you that allowed the cells to touch each other? Those are the remnants of those connections. Since there are no cells there, you don't see them attaching to each other. But normally, those are the remnants of where the cells were actually attaching to their neighbors. Now, this is the baby bone model. This bone model has one thing, two things extra that the other one didn't, and it's actually missing something as well. So this is looking, let's see, if we had the bone and we took a chunk out here, this would be looking this direction. So you're looking from the endosteum side. So here's my spongy bone, okay? You can kind of see it peeking out. This kind of red stuff that you see, that's the bone marrow. This pink layer right here is going to be the endosteum. Again, that's that kind of connective tissue sheath that's covering the spongy bone. These rings that you see, these are the internal circumferential lamella. Remember, circumferential means it goes all the way around the circle, except in this case, we're talking about internally inside this inner core, okay? The external circumferential lamella are here, and they kind of got them separated a little. Externally as well, I've got that periosteum. It's in blue. Looking at the bone itself, see these circles? These are osteons, okay? As a unit, it is called an osteon. And in the center of these are the central canals. Going sideways would be the perforating canals. Here are the canaliculi. Where the cells would be is the lacuna. Okay, so again, you see space. You don't actually see a cell. That would be the place that was holding it, so it's the lacuna. Central canals. Here's a perforating one that they actually have exposed at the top. Here, each one of these rings, in each one of these, is a concentric lamella. Now, if you look, you can see I've got this perfect ring of circles, this perfect ring of circles, perfect ring of circles, perfect ring of circles, perfect ring of circles, but there are spaces in between that still need to be filled up with bone tissue. These are going to be the interstitial lamella. Remember, interstitial means in between the tissue. So I'm basically just filling that space with bone tissue. Looking at the side where the periosteum is, you've got the Sharpie's fibers coming out and basically embedding in the bone. Again, still have the lacuna, still have the canaliculus that would be connecting, still have my circumferential lamella, circumferential lamella, concentric lamella, the osteon, the central canal, the interstitial lamella, the perforating canals, the central canals. All of these parts and pieces are still there. I just didn't label them. So make sure that you know what these are, including in the figures that I already presented. Now, I told you that you would have to know types, right? So types of bone is what type of bone is it? It'll either be spongy bone or it'll be compact bone. And I told you you'd have to know classifications. So is it a long bone, a short bone, a flat bone, or an irregular bone? Now, you're gonna also have to know which division a bone belongs to. And we have two divisions to the skeleton. The yellow, okay, is going to be the axial skeleton. So if you've ever seen a globe and they say it turns on its axis, the axis is the thing that the stick right down the center that the earth turns around. If you look at the yellow, that's kind of dead center in the middle of the skeleton. You've got the skull, the vertebra, the ribs, the sacrum. These are going to be part of the axial division of your skeleton. Now, the green. The green is the appendicular portion of your skeleton. Think appendage, so your arms and your legs. Now, with those appendages, you also have the girdles that hold them onto your skeleton. So up here with the arm, you've got the scapula and the clavicle that create the joint that your arm sits in. Down here, you've got the coxal bones that actually create the joint that your hip, where your femur is, fits in. So if you're one of the bones that is, let's say I give you a tibia as a bone and I say, what division does it belong to? You would tell me the appendicular division. If I were to give you a rib and say, what division does it belong to? You would tell me the axial division because it belongs to the axial skeleton. Okay, so that's the first section of that. Well, first section of the skeletal system. We're going to start going through the bones next.